Hi, this is Hilly Reads. You can call me Hilly, and I'm going to talk about what I read in the month of November. November wasn't a great month for me reading wise. I read 4 books this month. My lower months this year tend to be 4 book months. Try to hit. Well, I don't have a specific goal per month. I guess I'm just riding this wave. But November was a slow month for me. I read 4 books. We're going to talk about this today. And I'm also going to talk about what's next, kind of what I have in progress. I'm like midway through reading now, and what I think I'm going to read next. I'm going to touch on a couple of those, not getting too far into the weeds on those. So yeah, we'll just get started with what I read in November. The first thing I read in November was Everything is Tuberculosis. The History and Persistence of Our Deadliest Infection by John Green. I have a laptop off screen, so it's like you looking over there. So we all know who John Green is, I'm pretty sure. And this was obviously a really popular book. I think it just won the Goodreads Choice Award. I don't read a lot of nonfiction books. I find it hard to find ones that'll keep me engaged, but I heard a lot from a lot of different people that they like this one too. So I'm gonna read a quote real quick because I didn't really get into a synopsis or anything. It's a book about tuberculosis throughout history, and how we as humans like really perpetuate tuberculosis. Like this is a problem that could be solved, but it thrives under the inequality that we foster. So I'm gonna read a quote because I think John Green can sum it up really well, obviously, and I like this one. While I'm fascinated by how TB shaped culture and history, what's most important to me is how culture has shaped TB. The infection has long exploited human biases and blind spots, wriggling its way through the paths injustice creates. So it gives you kind of a sense of how he's going to talk about tuberculosis. It's throughout history, and you learn a lot. It's really informative. I don't learn too much about tuberculosis, especially like I live in the United States, and it's not viewed as a problem here because we have easier access to healthcare that makes it not a problem than other parts of the world. I listened to this as an audiobook. I was waiting for it on Libby. I kind of expected a long wait. I get pretty long waits on Libby. Any book that's kind of popular, it's at least a couple months, usually more. But this one came really quickly. I think they had a ton of copies of it, is why. John Green narrates it, so I thought that was a good way for me to experience it. Obviously, I've watched Crash Course a bunch, so if you've also watched Crash Course, very much like, you're familiar with this. It's John Green. Like I said, you learn a lot. Didn't know a lot about tuberculosis, but it's the kind of nonfiction that does keep me engaged, where it is it's also about people and individuals. It's really, a lot of it is centered on this TB patient that John met when this patient was a young boy. His name is Henry. He's a through line throughout it. I mean, and as well as some other people, but Henry is really like the biggest influence kind of on this, and an emotional center for it. And I think that's part of what keeps it really engaging. Is it's able to be informative, but also, also you think about the humans in it. I think John Green really made an effort too. He also says that a few times too, of like, it shouldn't all be statistics. We should be thinking about like human lives this is impacting. Because again, this is like a problem we could solve, but we're just gonna look at the statistics and be like, not we're going to, but that is what happens sometimes, is we look at the statistics and we're like, it's fine. But we're not thinking about the, real human lives at stake here. I don't read a lot of nonfiction. I didn't read any of the other like Goodreads nominees for nonfiction. I kind of scrolled through them. I'm not really in the mood for like like a thing I might be more inclined to read is like a true crimey sort of one, but I'm not really in the mood for that. I haven't been in a while. I don't think that's really something I've read this year at all. Just based on past history, that's kind of what I would be more inclined to read. None of them like super stuck out to me. I don't think I'll be reading any of the other ones, but this seems like a good pick. Like obviously I understand it's John Green. I understand why this won. And I totally recommend it. It was like a 5.5 hour audiobook, so like super short. It's a pretty short book. Touches on a lot of different interesting topics. It touches about like how tuberculosis has impacted fashion, and he really talks. It's interesting his perspective as a writer, him talking about tuberculosis as being this kind of like, it was really historically like romanticized, of like all these, you know, poets and whatever were dying from tuberculosis, and the tuberculosis is part of what makes them so creative and everything, which is really interesting to hear about, and might not be taught. Like if you were learning about tuberculosis in school or something, that probably, you know, probably wouldn't come up. And it's interesting hearing him talk about it as a writer. I think it's interesting to hear creative people talk about how we think about other creative people and like where creativity comes from. And it's probably not tuberculosis is, you know, the thing. What else? Yeah, I like, this is as good as a book. I don't think I would read a book about tuberculosis unless it was under these circumstances, and it's as good as a book about tuberculosis could be. I rated a 4.5. It's pretty high. Again, it's like I don't know what could have made this a 5 for me. It was as good as it could be, basically. But it didn't like blow me away, and a 5 is reserved for things that like blow me away. But it was very good. Would recommend. So we're gonna go to the second one. The second one I read was A Botanist's Guide to Parties and Poisons by Khavari. To give a synopsis, it follows Saffron Everly, which is, look at that name. She is a botanist, but she is working as like a research assistant. It's set in 1923, so she's obviously facing a lot of like sexism and stuff, which isn't, you know, it's realistic. It's not the most fun to read. And she goes to a dinner party that has a lot of, you know, professors and research people from her university. And at that party, one of the professor's wives is poisoned and dies. Saffron's kind of only ally in botany is her mentor, who she works under. He's kind of being blamed for this murder, and that's part of why Saffron is really involved in, she's investigating it, even though she's just a botanist, you know, she's not a detective. But she knows about plants, she knows about poison. So it's her and this other man, Alexander Ashton, who is a microbiologist. They're investigating it together mostly, and they have like a little bit of a romance between them. I read this because one of my best friends, he said it was like the best mystery he's ever read. He really hyped this up a while back, and then I saw it at like a used bookstore, and I was like, oh, that's cheap, I'll pick it up. He really liked it. Didn't go too much into detail on it because it is a murder mystery, and I'm also not gonna like get too into the weeds, but really loved it. I didn't love it. I thought it was okay, to the point where I don't think I'm going to continue on the series. The characters in it didn't, especially if I'm going to do a series for murder mystery. I want the characters who are going to be through-line characters, which is presumably Saffron and Alexander. I want to really follow them, and I didn't super in this one. They're not super boring, but they're not super anything. I don't know. They didn't stick for me. I understand why they would for other people. Yeah, Saffron really gets herself into some situations here. I think that's interesting. It's she gets herself in some interesting stuff, you know, that a traditional detective wouldn't get themselves into probably. But I never felt a lot of tension during those moments. I think maybe tone is so big for me in books. I think maybe with, I wanted it to, I think that's what I wanted. I wanted it to go even more so than like really wanting the characters to stick out. I really wanted the tone to stick out to me, like really pick a direction. When I hear the name Saffron Everly, I think, okay, maybe this will be kind of like quirky, you know, kind of whimsical a little bit. It's not really. It's also not like super heart pounding, tension filled moments. Like I said, she gets herself in some situations, but it's never super tensiony. Part of those moments, a lot of the time, is also like her having a little bit of romantic chemistry with Alexander, and so it's not that sometimes even in those moments of like, oh, they could get caught or something. It's talking a lot about their romantic tension more than, oh, they could get caught or something, I feel like. And so, like, my attention is split between those two things. And I don't feel super passionately about this romance because I don't feel super passionately about these characters. So I kind of would just prefer go to a super crank up the tension of the situation that is not romantic. Again, I don't have anything against the romance. I think like they make sense, and I just wish Alexander's backstory was fleshed out a little bit more. It's just kind of like touched on. We get a glimpse of it's to do with the war. I don't know. I wish there was more there. Probably there's not, because there are 2 sequels that are gonna follow them, I believe. So I'm sure it gets into it more there. I don't think I will be picking up the next ones. Didn't stand out to me. I rated it a 3. I could have gone lower. Ratings for me a lot of times are influenced by like if it was hyped up or if I had expectations going into it. I kind of did because my friend said that he loved it, but I'm gonna give it a 3. I'm gonna stick with the 3 for it. The next book I don't have because it is a library book, and it was a library book, and I did return it. It's Never Whistle at Night, an Indigenous dark fiction anthology. Whoops. It was edited by Shane Hawk and Theodore C. Van Alst Jr. The foreword is by Stephen Graham Jones. If you know a little bit about horror, you probably heard his name thrown around a lot. I've never actually read any of his books yet. I own like 3 of them now, I think. It's gonna happen soon. He wrote a foreword. I like the foreword. I thought it was good. He unfortunately doesn't have a story in here though. That's like a True Blue story. I wish he did. Otherwise I don't recognize a lot of these authors. I think they have like after each of their stories they have like a short blurb about them, and I think a lot of them are not they're not like Stephen Graham Jones level names. So it's not that crazy. I wouldn't know their names. I don't know a lot of authors' names, honestly. So it's called Never Whistle at Night because a lot of Indigenous people have beliefs around it being bad luck, or you're gonna like summon some sort of creature if you whistle at night. Also, like, it's a dark fiction anthology, which I'm like, what is... I don't know. Like, I know what dark fiction is, and that I can Google it and see what the definition of dark fiction is, but I don't even know of anything else I would classify as a dark fiction. I think most other things I would just call them horror. Dark fiction to me feels like a cop-out, so you don't have... If somebody's like, well, this wasn't horror, you're like, it's dark fiction. And that's kind of what I felt like with some of these. Some of them were more horror-like than others. So there's 26 stories in here. I read 25. There was one of them. I'm gonna look at which one it was. It was The Longest Street in the World by Theodore C. Van Alst Jr., so one of the editors of it seems like. I could not bring myself... And again, it's a short story. I wish I had the book in front of me, but like genuinely, none of them are like longer short stories even, so it's like probably honestly like maybe 15 pages at most. Probably not even. Couldn't finish it. Couldn't do it. I was like, maybe I'll come back to it at some point. I was like trying to read it on a plane, and other ones were hitting, and this one was not. The first couple pages of it were like really obnoxiously overwritten. And then the writing style just like switched all of a sudden, and it was not like that at all. But I didn't like that writing style either, so I was like, by this point I'm like, I'm so out. It was like really, again, I don't want to harp on this too bad because I don't want to be like too much of a hater or be, you know, too mean about it, but it was really, the beginning was like really overly descriptive, setting up stuff in a way that would have felt like too much for a novel, honestly. Like, it was a lot from like in a short amount of time, so didn't read that one. Because of that, I didn't rate it. I left it out of, I averaged what I did for this one. I'll tell you my rating at the end, but I averaged all the ratings. I rated each story and then averaged all of them, but I left this one out entirely. So I did out of 25. I'm going to talk about some of the ones I didn't like as much, and then I'm going to talk about some of the ones I really liked. And then I'm going to talk about kind of my thoughts as a whole. But the lowest ones were 2s. The ones I rated 2 were The Ones Who Killed Us by Brandon Hobson, Uncle Robert Rides the Lightning by Kate Hart, and then Capgras by Tommy Orange. I think that The Ones Who Killed Us and Uncle Robert Rides the Lightning, those two were kind of more not super satisfying to me as short stories. They seemed like they were descriptive and they were kind of a vignette more than a narrative. And I think those in general, unless like really blows me away, like with the language of it, really paints a beautiful picture. And I think it did for some people. The one review that I was reading where I had the Kushchaka thing open, one of them said like one of these like made her cry a few times. So I think definitely those could hit for some people. I think it's especially for something written like that, it really, you know, it finds its specific audience, and those ones just did not hit super well for me. I wasn't like swept up in the moment of it as much, and there wasn't like a narrative for me to be satisfied by as much. And then Capgras, I want to read the synopsis for that one because I have here in my notes that one had a really interesting premise, and what made me rate it lower, again, my ratings are influenced a lot by expectations, and I liked the premise of this one a lot, and I didn't feel it paid off, so it made me rate it lower than it might have even just being kind of blah premise, honestly. That one is here. Oh, yes. So this man is an author. He wrote a book. He goes to France to kind of do like a book tour for the translated version of his book, and he kind of finds out through doing these interviews that the translation of his book he does not feel was faithful at all. He gets like these, I think the way it's told of him like picking up on the bits and pieces of like the things these French journalists are asking him about, he's kind of like, what? Like, that's not what my book's about. Sort of things. And they did not think that the payoff for it was really good. That's a very interesting idea of being an Indigenous man writing about your experience, and then having, or even just in general, having somebody, like, translation is such an interesting topic because it is not objective. It is not a science. And whatever translators' biases and own thoughts on the material are gonna get in there, but it is different in this circumstance of having like some white French guy translate your book written maybe as an Indigenous man and kind of turn it into, I don't even know if I want to kind of, I don't know, it's not really a spoiler of like how you get a little bit of a sense of how it's construed. You can probably imagine. You can probably pick it up, but I won't say what exactly like the interviews are asking him about. Again, interesting premise, didn't love the payoff, so with a short story even, I like really want like a good button on it. I want a good end to it. I feel like that is what a lot of these were lacking for me, that didn't push a lot of them over the top. A lot of the reason here for me, because the idea was interesting, but you didn't wrap it up in a way that I was memorable. Maybe this is a good point for me to touch on here is like, I haven't read a ton of short stories. Honestly, most of the short stories I've probably read ever are Stephen King short stories. Like, more than any other, for sure. And I think Stephen King as a writer does that a lot with short stories has a good, again, a lot of them are horror ones, so there's like, there's something memorable about it that is horrific, and that is a really easy way to, not an easy way, a really good way to write a short story where it has a horrifying thing happens at the end that sticks with you. I have like more than several. I have quite a few Stephen King short stories that stick with me years and years. Like, I read in high school, and I remember how they ended. I remember the short story, but I remember how it ended because they were smart and inventive and had a good button on it and a good payoff. And I think almost all these did not. I think it kind of matters more with short stories of like, you nailed it in the end and it sticks with you. I don't think very many of these, if any, will be sticking with me. But now let's get to the more positive ones of maybe this will stick with me. Heart-Shaped Clock by Kelly Jo Ford was a 4.5. Scariest story ever by Richard Van Camp was a 4.5. And also Collections by Amber Blazer Wardzala, which I believe, no, it was the second to last story in it. It felt like the last one to me, kind of. In that, yeah, I think that one had a memorable button to it for sure. There was a horrific thing in that. Like, the whole thing was horrific and unsettling, but it had like an end to it, I remember. So I thought that one did a good job of that. It's like very, it's not subtle. It's, it whacks you over the head with what's happening. And that's fine. That's good, honestly, sometimes. I think that's, you know, you can want to avoid that for a short story because it can seem like a cop-out and, I don't have a lot of words, so I gotta really whack you over the head with what's going on. And so I think it is even more so impressive when you're kind of able to be subtle, but that doesn't mean it is bad because it just comes out and it says what it's about, you know? But I think my favorite of those was Scariest Story Ever. That one kind of doesn't have what I was talking about. It doesn't have, the end is maybe what I dislike the most about it, not because it's a bad ending, but because it doesn't have that like strong, memorable end to it. Just kind of ends, I guess. It ends at a logical point, but it didn't have like a thing that really stood out to me at the end, like a twist or a horrible thing happening. It has a conclusion, but it's nothing like bombastic. But the story of that, I was like hooked the whole time. Really was engaged in it. Really wanted to know what happened. And I'm gonna read the synopsis. So, determined to meet with an elder to steal a story from him for an upcoming contest, this man doesn't anticipate the elder seeing right through him. I like that. That's a good big synopsis. So yeah, it is this Indigenous kid. I don't think he's a kid, but he's younger. And he's like in a scary story competition, and he's been stealing stories specifically from this like one man. I think also like one of them was from his dead wife or something. Indigenous stories from him, and then taking them to these competitions and then like winning money for it. He's about to go to a big competition that's like gonna be on TV or something, and he wants to steal another story from this man, and so this guy tells him the scariest story ever, and that's a really interesting premise to dig into, this idea of not really connecting with these stories, but using them kind of for your own gain. And I think it had something interesting to say about that. So I would recommend that. All in all, as a collection, I wish I liked it more. I think you probably got the sense of me talking about like all these things I kind of wanted. Um, and the cover is very pretty. I mean, I'm gonna put up a picture at some point, hopefully, of the cover. It's very pretty, and I want another one of these still. I think like if they did like a volume 2 of this, I would read it again because I would be curious to see what it's like. But I want one that's like just say it's horror and just do horror. So I give it a 3 overall. They averaged out to like a 3.1 overall. I'm rounding down to a 3. That feels fair. Not extraordinary, but I did really like some of them. All right, the next book I don't have either. It was another library book, but if I had it, you would see it's a very small book. So like I read 4 books this month, but Everything is Tuberculosis was pretty short. This is also pretty short. I think it's 100 and something pages. It is The Empress of Salt and Fortune by Nghi. I'll put up a picture of it. It's another very pretty cover. This is a book in the Singing Hills cycle. It's the first one in it, although I think you can kind of read the books in any order, it seems like. It follows this cleric, Nghi, in this fantasy world. They are going around with this bird they have. I can't remember. Oh, the bird's name is Almost Brilliant, which is a fun little detail. Excuse me. And they're going around like getting people's stories. You don't get like a super clear sense of this world. It is a fantasy world, and you get there, there's more to it than kind of like our real world. And it, but the borders of it are not super clear, which is, it's fun, it's good. So you have this bird that can talk, obviously, this Almost Brilliant bird, he can talk, and there's a few things that happen in it that are kind of, magical, but you also don't get like a super clear sense of, you get some idea of what it means for Nghi to be a cleric, where they come from. But not everything's like, that's not the point of it, is to know every detail of like this backstory or something. They're there to get this other person's story. And in this one, it is this person, Rabbit, who was kind of like sold by their parents to the emperor. And then they become a handmaiden to the Empress. She's from a foreign country that their country looks down on. They have a contentious relationship generally, but this Empress is brought to this country to be a part of a political marriage to this emperor, and Rabbit becomes the Empress, whose name is Nghi, becomes her handmaiden. And it's about that. I don't know how much of the details of what happens I want to get into. I feel like that's going to be an overarching theme for me as I figure out kind of how to do this well. But Rabbit is the handmaiden to the Empress. We get bits and pieces of what that is like for her. This Empress who is from this other country that has this contentious relationship with the country she has been hauled off to. And what she does about that, what the Empress does about that, how the handmaid's involved in it. I like the world of it, and what I said before of like, it is a fantasy world, but we don't super, like, they're not, shooting fireballs out of their hands, like we can see what kind of magic they can do or anything like that. I don't even know if they can do magic. They're talking animals, I know that. And you're not getting a whole, it's a super short book, so you're not getting like a whole, like, you get a sense of these countries have a history, and but you're not, I don't even know if you know the names of the countries. It's like clearly like kind of Chinese inspired, but for some of it, but I don't even think you get like country names or anything. You're not getting like these whole backgrounds, which is fun. It's nice to just like jump into the world and be like, this is the world, let's move, you know, and not feel like a bunch of stuff's being thrown at you that you're confused by. It's fine. And I think in general, the writing was really great because it's not super heavy-handed like that. And there's some things that are spelled out for you, but there are other things that really aren't. And you kind of have to like think about it for a second, or, you know, it's not like all put out on you for a plate. It doesn't treat you like you're stupid, which is really nice. Your brain has to work a little bit while reading it. It's not like crazy or anything, but it's like, it's not all laid out for you super, super nicely. It's a well-told story in general, but a well-told story in this format of you're seeing it through Chi experiencing somebody else tell them this story. And I think that it's really beautiful. I'm excited for other ones in this because I like this idea of everyone's stories kind of matter. I think is a central theme of this book. It's not just the Empress's story that matters, it's also Rabbit's and the other people that are a part of this story too. I really liked it. I gave it a 4. I kind of, as I'm talking about it, maybe it's, I don't know if it's a 4.5. I struggle on ratings sometimes. I'm gonna call it a 4. I really enjoyed it. So those are the 4 books I read for November. I went on and on about them. Let me know if you've read any of the ones I did read this month or the ones I'm going to read. Let me know your thoughts on either of those. Let me know if I should DNF She's Not Sorry. Did you read it? Have you heard things about it? Did you DNF it? Let me know. I'm gonna try to keep at this. I'm gonna try to do a what I read in December, and I really think I'm gonna do a really big video of like everything I read this year. So far I've read like 70 something books. So again, that's gonna be a really big video. I also am gonna do, if you are interested in gay hockey romance at all, if you've been watching Heated Rivalry, I'm gonna talk about that at some point too. So like stay tuned for that. Like and subscribe. Every time I say it, I feel more and more insane. But thank you so much for watching. Bye.